What is up, Honey Badger Nation, man? Thank you guys tuning in to Expert Mentors 255. And we should just say Tina's Market, right?
That's fine. Yeah, that's
that's good.
Language for Central North Carolina. It's just Tina Call's Market. Yeah.
Tina Call's Market, from Tina Call's Market. So I'm really excited. So to dive in with you today, Anna, and you know what we've been focused. I mean, geez, it just like 255 episodes of this, right? Is crazy. It just goes to show, you know, how long we've been hanging around and how long, you know, the Honey Badger Nation has really been here and you know, just gathering incredible human beings like yourself, like Tina Call. And so we're, you know, always excited to get, you know, as people that maybe haven't had an opportunity to connect with you, be able to plug in and add some value back into the community. And I'm really excited for that to happen today. So Anna, give a little background, give a little bit of a story, you know, life before real estate, and then, you know, kind of that real estate journey for yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. So I grew up around real estate. My dad was a developer, retired in 2009, not electively, but just with market conditions. And so I was always familiar with it, always knew it was a wealth building tool, always understood it for a lot more than, you know, it's a place to live with countertops that I love and finishes that I find dreamy, right? So I actually was a musical theater major in college. And I was working in that capacity after college. And this is what I always tell people. I hated my hours because I always worked in the weekends and the evenings. And I just hated having to be on all the time. And then I got into real estate. So I don't know what shift I thought I was going to find between those two things. But I got licensed kind of arbitrarily in like 2015. I just thought, hey, maybe I can help my dad. He was poking around some projects. I was just kind of burnt out from a performance standpoint. And I got licensed. And I kind of piddled around until 2019. And in 2019, I realized I always wanted to have a big business. I knew I wanted to follow entrepreneurial roots from my family. And I kicked my husband out of his outside sales job. It just wasn't going to work for both of us to be kind of competing for that lifestyle with our one child at the time. And pretty much had to figure it out, right? Went from dual income to single, forced me to really up my production. And so I became really a full-time agent, I say, in 2019. In 21, I was selling, 40 homes a year, burnout, showing homes a week after I delivered twins, just kind of those nightmare stories that you hear from real estate agents whose 1099s look great, but no one really understands what is happening to create that number. And then that number wasn't satisfying anymore. That didn't do anything for me, right? I knew I could now run a business, I could sell homes. I didn't know how to run a business. And so 21, I moved over to the EXP platform and started the team building process. I run a team of 30 agents now. We're staring down 100 million in production this year. We already have about 36 locked down for quarter one, which is kind of amazing, and pending and closed, and just like life-changing things over the last 2 years. From zero leverage to tons of leverage to big business to being able to spend my day on a platform like this instead of out just constantly opening doors for that next paycheck. Just a lot of real big changes in my life, and I'm very grateful for the EXP platform for finding a way to help entrepreneurs in real estate build sustainable businesses. And so that's where we are today. There are days that I still have a job. I still am opening doors and pulling my hair out with real estate. So don't think by any means I have it all figured out. But just leaps and bounds from the girl I was 21 when I was, looking at that big 1099, but not really sure why I was doing what I was doing at that point.
Yeah, it's always interesting. I love, digging into backstories and, kind of the journey and path that, ultimately leads into real estate. It's just such a collection of misfits and like no business being here, but we ended up here, and how did we get here? And so there's just so much, I believe, wisdom, always being able to look back and connect those dots. Hearing kind of your major and maybe it was a pursuit of passion that led you down that path. And I guess more so what I'm kind of inquisitive and curious about how has, those things that you dedicated a portion of your life to study and obsess over, how has that, carried into, the business and the business that you've built today?
Yeah, I tell people all the time, I used to have parents. So when I was teaching in the arts world, they'd be like, is my kid good enough to go to Broadway, right? Like, should we continue her in these, musical theater classes, or should we let her focus on soccer? And I would always tell these parents, like, they can do whatever they want to. The soft skills that are gleaned through an arts education, I think, are unmatched. I believe that empathy levels for people that come in the arts world are significantly higher. I mean, one of the things that we study and we train is how to leave our body and get into someone else's, how to leave our brain and get into someone else's. And so I think it gave me a huge advantage coming into the sales world, because I literally am able to completely shut down what I have going on and truly just empathize, embody that person that I'm sitting there talking to. And that's something that took years of study, right? Just voice training. Like, we're on the phones a lot during the day. We're in meetings a lot during the day, properly projecting, being able to preserve my vocal health, knowing my body language, being aware even at this moment what my hands are doing, how my shoulders go. There's so many things. I always tell our agents, if you're having a hard time in some natural conversations, go jump in an improv class somewhere. Like, go do some arts training, because it correlates so clearly to the sales world, because it's all, I believe, very soft skilled base. And so I think it's it was a huge leg up. So arts education, I'm always going to give the thumbs up to for that.
I love that. And I couldn't agree with you more. I had one of my clients, very, very successful, agent, in the KW world, top in the entire state. And, as a leader, there was just some things getting out in front, and just some things that were struggling. So we knew that was an area that he wanted to improve, and he committed to Toastmasters for almost 6 months, 8 months, and just changed his whole perspective of being able to get in public speak and articulate the things that he needed to. So, like, I think anything that we become, really committed to, right, and really almost kind of an obsession, is that we've got to be willing. Yeah, you got
That's
to
my
be
favorite word, hyperfixation. I'll warn my team. I'm like, I'm hyperfixated on this right now, just so you know.
I love it. I love it. So Anna, kind of unpack, what we're really wanting to convey and dive into today. Just like every dang one of these episodes, I always personally walk away with a handful of notes, and I, expecting none, the same today. So kind of talk about, the area that we really want to emphasize, and kind of the pointers that we really want to leave the Honey Badger Nation with today.
Yeah. So this topic comes from a conversation that I've had, and a presentation I've been privileged to give in a couple of different rooms. And it really started with looking at our tech stack, right? And that's what everyone wanted. They wanted our sauce on, because we're very integrated with a lot of different systems. A lot of things talk to one another. We're very highly leveraged when it comes to tech on our team. That's why we've been able to grow at the rate we've been able to, because we're so systematized. But the problem is, when you have that conversation with people, there's a whole back, I think, motivation to help you understand, if I can realize that this, and we call it our multi-valued function. In fact, our whole team hates that phrase because they hear it so many times. You have to be motivated by one thing leading to 4 or 5 things. Like, we have to trade that mentality of, I'm going to do X and receive X in return. And so I was inspired when we were looking at a turn. I built my team in a tailwind, right? Like, I'm not going to sit here and be like, it was really hard to build a team in 21. It was not. We could overspend, and we were fine, because there were houses selling like crazy. I know without any shadow of a doubt that the tailwind helped us build a team. So when 23, end of 22, early 23 rolls around, and that tailwind shifted into a very quick headwind, we kind of had to start really understanding, how do we continue this growth pattern with the market yielding less sales? And John Glutch shared at a event. He said, if you did X last year and you sold 40 million, you're going to have to do twice as much to yield 40 million this coming year. And that scared me, because I was already tapped out on time, right? Like, I didn't get more personal time because the market shifted and changed. And so we had to start realizing, how can we still do X, but how can we put X against multipliers that will send this into producing 3 or 4 or 5 outcomes for our team? And so we found it, and we call it our multi-valued function. And pretty much anything we do, we have to look at it and say, okay, if I do this activity, can I get 5 or 6 results from it? Because if I can't, I need to reevaluate that initial activity. And we were talking before we hopped on a little bit about, you know, the EOS, the entrepreneurial operating system. And so one of the first things that we talk about before we even get into tech is we talk about the placement of core values in our business. And so this is where, when people come to hear us talk about tech and we start with core values, you start watching them be like, what have I signed up for? This is not what you advertised. But you know, our first and I think one of our most substantial multi-valued functions in our business is our presence of our core values. So we have 7. I wanted 4, but our team came together. We went through the process through the book Traction, which rides around in my purse like a you know, encyclopedia. I can reference to the page if someone has a problem where they need to go in that book. I'm a huge believer. So, you know, if you're watching this and you're not in Traction, take a look. But we developed our 7 core values, and just right there, you know, that runs our HR department, right? We're a small business, but we have a full HR department that's literally in place because these 7 core values exist. They make beautiful marketing pieces in our listing presentations and our buyer presentations. They help with big picture decision making. They help us recruit agents. They help us you know, advertise and promote culture within our organization. So right there, most of us will just create a core value, stick it in a frame, shove it on the wall, never touch it again. We live in them every single day. And because of that, we get that multi-valued function, because we've got 8 or 10 things, budget planning, so many things we can always go back and say, hey, this is what we're going to do because our core value said so. And so I think they're one of the purest forms of one thing that you can do that can show up 7 or 8 different places. I know it's a real high level concept, but to me, that is like one of the most pure examples of where we get things wrong. Because we usually do something and then we go put it here and that's the end of it. If we're going to take the time to develop our culture through these core values, they should just be serving us all day long, everywhere that we are. We hire, we fire against them. They are absolutely crucial. So that's one of our big examples of just to get your head kind of wrapped around this concept of what's one thing that can produce 6 or 7.
That's a great distinction. And so, you know, liken it to, and you want to take it even a little bit higher level, you know, you get into secondary impact and, you know, the ripple effect, right? It's part of decision-making theory. And when you get into understanding, okay, well, what do those values, what do those words mean? And then, you know, how are we going to, you know, measure or put a quantification around it? And then you get into, okay, well, where can this be, you know, we live by this, we make the decisions by this. What's the ripple effect? And most people, you know, don't stop and think of that secondary impact of that decision, but those values are everything.
Yeah.
And it's such a great example. And, you know, we're definitely, you know, proponent of EOS and Traction and what Gino's done. You know, life before Traction, we were, you know, Vern Harnish. We were disciples of Vern Harnish and Mastering the Rockefeller Habits. And in fact, in Traction at the beginning, he gives shout out and kudos to Vern. And so, you know, if you guys have been down the EOS rabbit hole, if you haven't, go down the EOS rabbit hole.
You're not too small. That was one of the best things. I was at EXPCon. It was a couple weeks after my mom had passed away. I was in a complete just blur, just kind of going through life. And I just will never forget. It was Kyle was on stage, obviously, like in our group. So I hear him talk a lot, but he was like, just go get it. You're not too small. Right. And I think that is really important, because I used to hear people talking about it and I was like, well, I'm not doing 500 million in production and I only have 2 or 3 agents. At the time that we integrated, I think I had, you know, 6 agents on the team and 1 full-time staff member. And I remember being like, is this dumb? Like, this is not good for me. No, you're not too small.
You could have done it with you and an assistant.
Correct.
You're never too small. And the reason I like EOS, it's not perfect, but I like it because it's simple. And you answer 8 questions within the VTO. It gives you the framework. It also gives you other operating systems and ways to conduct meetings. It is a really fantastic there. And I would say, you know, if you want to amplify it, there's, you know, Vern, Mastering Rockefeller Habits, Scaling Up. And what you're talking about right now is obviously people that know me and we've worked together. They know, like they know how happy I am right now hearing you immediately jump to core values, because it's where it all starts. It all starts with the values.
It is. And it's one of the things that I think it becomes a checkbox in business building for people. They're like, okay, I got to have some core values. And I know, because when I give this presentation in groups, people, I'll ask, like, what are your core values? And like, everyone will be like, well, like, I know, like, honesty is, like, you'll hear the same, not that it's a bad word. It's just like, you hear the same kind of arbitrary words over and over again. Right. And you can almost just assume, and at this point, I'm sure everyone's just chat GPTing their core values, right?
Yeah.
And so it's funny. One of our core values is fun, and people thought that was really strange. But if you go through the process, you kind of pull out what makes people superhumans in your organization already. And my sister-in-law, when we went through and started categorizing, who she was, fun was what came out. And I was like, that is so important, especially in a real estate organization. I mean, we really don't have a ton of boundaries when it comes to work-life balance. We're constantly in a lifestyle of selling real estate. And so fun is really important for us as a team, because if we're not having fun, we're literally not having fun, right? Because our life just spills over into our work all the time. But one of the things that I pulled out was, the application of ability is fun. And I can brag on them right now. I have 5 or 6 agents on our team that love marketing. They love marketing. And I'm sitting over here and I'm watching, even in our organization, people paying tons and tons of money to contract out to go to these marketing companies to develop things. And I've got 5 or 6 people that love what they do in marketing that are here right now strategizing on some seminar opportunities for our team to take advantage of, because we believe that the application of ability is fun, and fun is one of our core values. And so I don't have to sit here and be like, oh, is this bad? Like, they're 1099 like agents, like, should they have to be in here like working on something that's business related to the team? No, like it's in line with our core values, right?
Yeah.
And that is so important. And I think that's one place that we don't leverage human ability, but to understand how that ties in. Again, it's such a complex thought. But again, most people will just we'll throw empathy up on the wall and be like, I have a core value, right? Yeah. And I don't really understand, but how do I make this work for me every single day?
Yeah. And the thing there, Anna, to your point, and we made the mistake too. So Chad Goldwasser was number 1 in the world for KW back in 05, 06. And he had come to our office, touring our office. And, because we started Radio and Television Experts with Matt Wagner, Jay and myself. Mm-hmm. And so we had our first conference in our office in Lawton, Oklahoma. And Chad come in and he started talking about core values. And Jay and I looked at each other and we're like, damn, I guess we need some core values. He's number 1 in the world. We better do it, to your point. Right. And so we just copied Chad's core values, and we didn't understand that the power of this. And I know, like, here we are, 10 minutes later, still harping on core values. Yeah. But if you don't get this right, everything else, you're building your business on a house of cards. Correct. And it's just because it's the first component of your vision. And without a compelling vision, and it's the whole thing, right? Without a vision, the village will perish. And how you have and start your vision is with these values. And like, I think, like, to just cover your whole concept of how it cascades across the entire organization. But for you as a leader is making them visible, bringing them to people's attention, creating, characters or accolades around it. Because, for most of us in sales organizations, all of the shout outs and accolades typically go to sales. Yeah. But what about the support and the admin and all the creatives and everything that make the sales possible? You got to give. And so for us, we acknowledge and award core values, right? So like my number 1 core value is, constant pursuit of personal and professional development and growth, right? It's always be better, right? Keep growing. And so accolades around that, creating book clubs, trainings, everybody's reading something. So it's so important. Another resource, and if you don't have it, like, get it immediately, is Jim Collins' book, Beyond Entrepreneurship. Mm-hmm. And get BE 2.0, Beyond Entrepreneurship 2.0. He wrote the original back in 1992, 94. And he gave a copy to Steve Jobs, and Jobs said, hey, it's fantastic, but you're missing a chapter. And the chapter was on people. So when he did 2.0, came out at the end of 20, So imagine what happened from mid
Right.
early 90s to 20. And so he said, hey, this is what we got right. This is what we got wrong. Here's where we would make the improvements. He added the people chapter in, but the chapter in there on vision is this, and he really goes deep on core values, and then obviously purpose, and then what you said at the beginning, right? The big BHAG, right? That big, hairy, audacious goal. What we want to be when we grow up 10 years from now. And all three of those make the vision, but that is also another example from a multi-function
100%.
that cascades everywhere, right? So no, we got it. So I think that distinction and that clarity is key and so important. So now you have that framework, and you have, okay, how we're creating things, and we got to do it to where it ripple effects into other areas. How do you go about like pushing people to help creative ways and thinking about it instead of thinking in a singular action? How do you get them to think multiple? It's almost like thinking 4 or 5 chess moves ahead.
It's hard. And I think for whatever reason, and not because I'm smart, I just think my brain has always operated that way. I'm a huge Pat Lencioni person. Our whole team also operates hugely on working genius. Like every single person is tested as they're coming into the organization. We have our map on the wall. So I always tell people I'm an IE, right? So like, not only do I like to problem solve for people, I like to create problems to solve for people, which is sometimes very problematic when you're leading an organization. So one of the ways that I've really tried to kind of rechannel that, instead of looking for a problem now, I really kind of, and I was terrible in math growing up. So like the fact that I'm even using a math equation is bonkers to me. But, if we know that our outputs are going to equal the input times our function, right? My goal as a leader now, especially when it comes to, the next thing that we usually, when we go in this presentation, we talk about lead flow, right? How to really make sure that our lead flow is multi-valued functioned. And so I try to create Fs. I try to create functions. And that is just systems and processes that our agent can take a single activity and multiply against. So, back in 21, an agent could get a call, go show a house, come home, write an offer, be done, and then potentially just restart that process. And again, they could do it over and over again. When we were trying to conserve our time in 23, we tried to create a system against that showing, right? That we could just plug our agents into. They don't have to figure it out. It's just, this is what you do. You get the phone call for the showing. When you go do that showing, you're going to go ahead and do any of that market research that you're going to do on that particular neighborhood, run comps, whatever. But you're going to then go ahead and just get that into the Slack channel so that the other agents can look at the research that you've done, because otherwise you did it in a bubble. Why don't we go ahead and get that access information over to our other team members? While you're there, you're going to go knock 4 or 5 corresponding doors, especially if your buyer doesn't like the house. Hey, Mr. Seller, I just showed 123, or Mr. Neighbor 123 Main Street. It didn't work out for my buyers, but they've really targeted this neighborhood. And I'm just curious, who do you know that might be selling next? Just, you're out there. You've already driven the miles. Go knock 4 or 5 doors. It's really, really easy to tack that on. And then always requiring some kind of social media piece to that. Hey guys, I'm out showing property today. Hey, I'm at a neighborhood local coffee shop to where I showed some property to today. And just ingraining that function in with the showing for our agents so that they're not going and doing one thing to get one result. We're doing one thing and we're getting 4 or 5 different things that come from that, from an activity we already had on our calendar in our schedule, right?
Yeah, amplifying it. So how do you define for your team and kind of going through this so they understand the concept of functions? How do you break that down to them?
Yeah, so we pretty much we're very process driven here. And so even with the integrations with our tech, like today, for instance, we literally spent our entire sales meeting today going back and focusing on our sales funnel, right? Educating on a sales funnel that we've built for them, helping them understand to value the process and not the outcome. So I think from leadership, we spend a ton of time focusing on, this is how this should work. This is what you should be doing, and spending way less time on focusing on, and this is what the result's going to be, right? And that's a shipwreckism, right? Like focus on the process, be obsessed with the process. Professional athletes are obsessed with the process, not the outcome. And so I think that's where we're always redirecting, is back into process and making sure that they understand the processes. We build a lot of them, but then they're no good if we build them and no one uses them, right? So that
Exactly.
educating to the process continually.
Yeah. And so another way, to just kind of, continue to add to, everything that you said there, is, and this is where a lot of agents get messed up too, right? Especially small and starting out, like you said, hey, just me and admin. And then we had 6 agents. Typically what we see happen is that they just start putting names and they're going to do this. And that's the wrong way. The right way is get clear on the functions first, right? Within the organizational structure and all the functions. And then what I love, with pull into EOS, right? Do they get it? Do they want it? They have the capacity for it to be able to do that. And then you can start to form your agreements around it, but functions first, right? Head of company, head of sales, head of marketing, head of operations, head of finance, head of IT. IT's not stuck down over here. IT is its own thing, right? Like that's kind of your competitive advantage, is that you've been focused on IT as in tech, automations, right? Integration of AI into everything that we do.
If it comes into our database and that's all it does, I would just assume you hit the delete button, because there's no point in them being there, right?
Exactly.
I mean, one of the really good examples of tech that I think we've run is, I a high eye on the disc scale. Like, I love my phone to ring. I love to pick up my phone and talk to people. I absolutely love it. It was hurting our agents' lead flow, because I had sign calls coming in. I had people coming in. And do I make a great job converting on the phone? 100%. But when that's where it died, was in my mind and on my call, I lost all these opportunities for my team. So I have Lex reception service on my phone. Pretty much any call that I don't know who it is going through that process. There's a live answering service on the back end. They're qualifying sellers. They're asking buyers, are you working with an agent? What is the property you want to see? And then it's automatically hitting follow-up boss and automatically being signed to an agent on a team. So I can sit here on a call with you. I can know that for the next hour, any sign calls that we get are already going to be in play before I've gotten out of my office. And there's so many agents that are so worried about losing control over some of that aspect. But again, that phone call, while it might have been a great phone call and I might have converted that buyer lead, and maybe if it was just me, that makes more sense. But when I've got a business to run, I am a hindrance to the process, because my brain doesn't work like this. I have to build systems for it. And so finding little hacks like that along the way, putting them together, and then explaining to our team the significance of that, it really does retrain people's brains to be like, nope, this needs to be part of a process. Anna said this needs to be in a process. What's my process?
Yeah. And you nailed it, is that you become the bottleneck, not because that was the intent. Your intent was positive. Your intent was do the right thing. However, if you think that way, you soon will become the bottleneck, and you can no longer grow. And then, you can't get the momentum to grow, and therefore then you never find scale.
That's right.
So I think it's so important to make sure, people listening in is that, your whole objective, right? You're even if you're on the team, you're still head of your own company, right? Your own business as a real estate agent.
Yes.
And if you really are serious and want to grow, you've got to, number one responsibility is, the right people in the right seats, but you need to work yourself out of a job, right? I mean, ultimately that's exactly what we're trying to do. Right. And the longer you hang on to it, the longer, you become the bottleneck. And that's about where it stops.
Yeah. I mean, our team, right, we've closed 17 pending, 5-10 on the market, like big volume, like big changes from where I was 2 years ago. Right.
Yeah.
We've not done that for any other reason except we were able to bring people in, more agents in, because we can manage the process. See, we don't pay for a lot of lead sources, and we're not on a Zillow. We don't, our phones are not ringing, right? With people that are like, I'd like you to show me a house in 5 seconds. And so we had to really squeeze out. And I think creativity always comes in places like this. We had to squeeze out every opportunity. So when the sign call used to come in, when I was an independent agent at my complete, just like wits end and had no more capacity, that sign call didn't matter as much to me, right? The value of it was inherently lower at the time. Now that sign call is, it's a $6,000, $7,000, $8,000 paycheck for an agent on my team, right? And so we have to take advantage of that. And so I think one of the single value function was My phone would ring on a sign call. I'd jot their information down. When the house didn't work for them, that was it. It just died on the sticky note in my office until I forgot what it was and threw it away. And now the multi-valued function is the call coming into the reception service putting it into our CRM for us, the CRM then putting those people into Fellow, into Real Scout, into a drip campaign, into all of the capacity without anything happening except my phone not being answered by me. That's amazing, right? That's amazing. But the problem is most people won't slow down to integrate those things. They won't slow down in their business, in their door-to-door kind of sales world, to focus on building these things out because they don't understand the inherent value of it. And that's kind of the purpose of the conversation, the multi-value function, is if you can really understand the value in it, you can see that, hey, maybe I'm taking my foot off of what I believe to be my money-making activities for today, but I'm building something that's going to allow for that money to expand significantly more, significantly faster, because I'm actually making one activity serve me in 7 or 8 places.
So how do you coach your team and lead them through? I know you had kind of given kind of an example around the lead side of things, but is there just a reminder, a framework? Is there something that you do that, you know, obviously we need to be reminded more than we need to be told. So it's not going to happen and catch the first time. It takes multiple times, maybe examples, living the example, like dropping the ball on a couple things to then, you know, be able to point out and realize. So how are you getting them to think that way? Right. I think that's the most important thing as us as leaders is being able to instill a framework of how to think differently and how to think accurately is a competitive advantage. So like what you're talking about here is just changing the way that people think and see things and the actions they take, which is, you know, I think you're starting to see some of the rewards from it, but you really won't see the rewards for multiple years down the road. Right. And it'll really pay off in that way, in the way that you think and change people. So like, is there a framework? Is there a reminder? Is there a process? Like what's the cadence and the rhythm that you put them through?
Yeah, I think just from the onset of onboarding, I think we really try to get them in process. So one of the things that we don't do is we don't do a catch-all, you know, single style onboarding process. So we're not waiting for X amount to then start an onboarding. We actually onboard and get them into process right away. So like we're helping them import leads from wherever they're coming from. We help them import their sphere. And we're very hands-on on getting that part of the process going. The other thing I think that is huge is I block my calendar Friday morning, especially if we're going to talk about lead flow, because that's really where this heightens their business, right? I mean, it's great for it to spill over into other areas, but I think lead flow is one of the places where they really see the benefit of this mindset shift. And so we have what we call lead flow Fridays. And so my calendar is blocked on Friday mornings. There's 30-minute slots. Agents can come sign up and I'm in the database and I already know where their bottlenecks, what's going on. And we're able to sit here and say, well, if you would have put them into the correct stage to start with, this is the drip campaign that they would have received. This is the holes that could have potentially been filled, right? And so just constantly just going back, I think, into the database, specifically for lead flow with our agents and saying, here's what would have happened if it would have been used correctly. And I think honestly, 2 or 3 of those, seeing that, you know, play out, you know, in a way that they realize they lost some of their time because it could have been done for them, is huge. We're big on our drip campaigns for our in-contract clients. So, you know, if you're a buyer under agency, we have a drip campaign for that period of your life cycle before you've gone under contract that's very heavy on education to look at in homes, you know, what the process is for buying in North Carolina, due diligence, all those things. And, you know, one agent is sitting there trying to answer 90,000 questions that their client's sending them, to be able to show them that we have this built for you, but it's not going to work unless you get X, Y, and Z put into place the correct time. It will slow them down because they'll realize I can speed up, but I've got to slow down first. So it's what you said. I mean, it's just, I can't spend months and months training it up front. We have to get them in and get them going and then show them the missed opportunities. And that usually corrects so that they catch it the next time.
Yeah. You're just changing the way they think and the way they see every activity and opportunity. And obviously, you know, in real estate, we hear it all the time, right? You know, get listings because listings amplify everything else. Right. And that's another, I think, a really good example from, the importance of like listing centric organization, all we do is focus on listings, because that gives us opportunity for social. That gives us an opportunity out within the community. It gives us an opportunity, open house, bringing more traffic in. Like listings, just they amplify everything. So I think that's another great example of it as well.
It is. Yeah. I mean, we have a circle prospecting plan that is, we believe, pretty foolproof. And I tell agents all the time, if you're going to self-procure a listing, you're not required to do it. I think you're dumb, but you're not required to do it. But for any team listing, I mean, it's in our team listing agreement that you have to follow through with that circle prospecting plan. You have to incur the cost to get the mailings out. You have, like, that's the responsibility of taking one of our listings, because a single listing in a neighborhood is great, but 4 or 5 that follow that, you've already done the work. You know the neighborhood. You've done the marketing. You're already in some ways known and trusted when you get that home sold within neighbors. And so our circle prospecting plan is actually one of our little give me's in this presentation slide deck, because I'm like, you want to see a multi-valued function at work? It's circle prospecting. It's so essential. And it's why I tell agents all the time, take the listing, figure it out, take the listing, because the opportunities are so much more boundless on that side of it. And it's why our team is probably doing the numbers that we are, because we've always been very listing focused.
Oh, I love it. I love it. So, obviously getting going with this, if you were, given some feedback here and, the honey badgers are like, cool, I get it. Yeah, it makes sense. What do you want to tell them if they, to kind of start?
Yeah.
To be able to start with it? Is it just more intentional in your activities? Where do you
100%.
start to document it? Like where does it go? Obviously graduate level, but just like, got it. Now what do I do? I hear you, I understand it, but now what do I do for this to start working for me?
Yeah. So again, when we give this presentation, a lot of times people think it's all tech related, and then they like it for 5 seconds. And then about 20 minutes in, they're like, whoa, like my head is broken. There's so much going on here that's over my head. And so then, to bring it back at the end, the most important thing, and you just mentioned it, is just to look for these things in your business. Just straight up, can you just recognize where they are? We just gave some great examples: core values, a listing, right? Pretty quintessential to what we do. Or, a lead flow on a sign call. You got to slow down, recognize where they are. And once you understand that natural advantage that they provide, then it's a matter of understanding that it's okay to dedicate time to exploring and to building that stuff out. And one of the things I'll talk specifically with tech is a lot of things already talk to one another. There's a lot of integrations already inherently out there just in the software and the programs that we use. We're just not inclined to go look for it because we don't understand that value. So I think the biggest thing is, like, just understand the value and start poking your head into, could this serve me somewhere else? What could I do here that can show up somewhere else? And if you can, just like you said, just make some of those documentation notes. Like, just start journaling a little bit about it. Even if you just need a very manageable step, take next quarter and say, one of my rocks is going to be just trying to find these things, right? And then I'm going to write down opportunities, and then, make a plan of action for, I want to start integrating in my lead flow. I want to start integrating in my organizational health. Find a department and dive in, because you're going to find all these spaces in your business where this is just inherent and you've just been ignoring it because you didn't understand the value and you didn't understand that it was there. So it's very philosophical, but it changes to tactical the second you put it to action, right? And that's what's really amazing about it, is it's not a lot of middle space. Like, you envision it and you go put it into action right away.
Yeah, no, I love that. Are there any resources, you get the people that are kind of like, yeah, I need to dive a little bit deeper in on this. Like, what is there any kind of resources or things that you kind of recommend to kind of pay attention to that can help, move this along a little bit faster?
A lot of us are in tech systems. Like, I'm sure there's plenty on this call that are on Follow Boss. I'm sure you are. Just, it's a gold standard, right? You have a client success manager. Someone is in the world of Follow Boss that is literally paid to sit behind their computer and help you with things. And I think as agents, at least I've always been this way, because I'm a fast implementer. I'll get into something, I'll figure it out just well enough to learn how to use it, and I'm like, I'm good, right? I've been forcing myself to take calls. They kept bugging me. They're like, we'd really like to sit down with you for an hour. We think we can help you. And I was like, you can't help me. I train people on how great I am at Follow Boss. I sat down within 2 seconds. They showed me 3 or 4 things that I was like, oh, that's great.
Uh,
So we're bad about tapping into, especially if we're paying fees for these additional services, to not go use these success managers.
yeah.
And I was guilty of it until about 6 months ago. And now I've like fully surrendered. Like my poor fellow rep, like I email that girl daily. I'm like, hey, can we make this better? Can we fix this? Can you show me what I'm doing wrong here? So I think really just like making sure that those people are accessible and that you're using them. I think that's a big miss with realtors, because we don't like to get into that back end of stuff. We just like to use it like we know how to use it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. Go deep, right? Go deep on
Go
it, And I think, to your point, because you said it earlier, is that, I can almost guarantee, every agent is not squeezing all of the juice out of the opportunities that they have, right? And I think I hear you talk about, this concept and the way to think about it and the way to look at it. It's the same thing, right? So like if you've got something that's working, like you haven't exhausted everything that you possibly can to extract the full, potential and opportunity out of it. And so, start there. What's working, and go deep on it. Go deeper on it. And I think that will help serve everybody, and start to get your mind looking around. Okay, we're doing this. How can we do, this work for us a little bit better? How can it get us, kind of ripple effect into something else that's going to open another door and another opportunity for us.
Yeah, nothing happens in a bubble, right? And that's been a big conversation in our team, especially with everything going on in our industry right now, right? Nothing happens in a bubble, but I do think that it is truly just opening your brain to look for these things and realizing the value of them. And
Yeah.
so I tell my story and I talk about our production numbers, not because they're the end all be all, but because those are the results. And now that I understand the value of the time that I put into this stuff, I'm like, everyone can do this, and none of you are doing it to its full capacity. I'm not doing it to my full capacity. And just realizing there's just so much more opportunity out there, and you can get that time back. Because again, it all comes back to that like sobering moment where I realized it was going to take twice the input to get the same output as the year before. And I have, 3 young children. I have 4 some days, because my husband at 42 is still in that boat. Like, I knew that like creating more time wasn't going to be an option. And so really digging in and realizing, how do I make my time work for myself? Compression, right? Like it's just, you can tell there's a change as a business owner when the money becomes less valuable than the time. And I think that is when you get to that place and you start being there, like live there, like embrace it. Because I think some of your best moves are going to come in that period of build, when you start to understand that your time is the most valuable asset that you have, knowing that no matter what, the money will come, right? And it's kind of that process outcome thing. The money will come. My time is just so valuable. How do I make sure that it's protected? And that's what really all this goes back to, is truly a desire to protect time.
I love it. And amazing. Definitely I feel, everything you're talking about, and even starting the conversation with core values, building your business on a solid foundation instead of a house of cards. And, like
all
you
the
said,
tech is so cool.
yeah.
But if it's built on nothing, then it's a waste of all of our time, right? I mean, it really is. It's a hard thing to wrap your head around, but it was a game changer for us. I'm just glad I found it before my house of cards failed and I had to rebuild. And that's what, this EXP platform has given us is the people ahead of us saying, don't do it this way.
Yeah.
Let me show you a better way to do it. So I'm happy to share that message as loud as I can, because I certainly saved a lot of money, a lot of time, and I think a lot of problems, because people said, hey, you need to jump on this, look at this, plan for this. And core values is one of those things that was shared very early on for me.
Yeah. So good. It, like you said, it's easy catching the tailwind, but you really see kind of what it's made of when you meet that resistance into kind of, like you said, the headwind. So amazing. And I thank you so much for jumping in, really embodying what this whole Expert Mentor series is all about. And, just coming from a place of contribution and adding value and making this community the best it can be.
It's the best, and we can only make it better.
That's right. Awesome. Anna, appreciate you. You guys connect with Anna, give her lots of love, and we'll catch you guys on the next episode. See ya.
Thanks, John.
Thanks.
Bye, friends.